Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I hope you all had a good day. Good evening. Good day so far. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's class. I would like us to start by, having some flashback at the lessons we learned from our last class. I remember being the one that taught the last class. So I want at least 5 volunteers to take 1 minute each to highlight key lessons learned from that class, please. Who's going to go first? Key takeaways from the last class.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay.
Please go on.
Good. My take home from the last class is I learned about quality, and I'll be able to differentiate between quality and grade. And as facility manager, we need to ensure that we get things right the first time. And by one of the how we can get things right is by standardizing tasks, and also to allow feedback from our tenants. I also learned about FM quality measurement, and the purpose of the measurement is reduction in the frequency of rework, can also increase in recommendations. And also I learned about the factors influencing FM quality improvement. One of the things is the external factor, while the other one is the internal factor.
Okay.
So I also learned about the Toyota quality, the principles.
Yeah.
We need to follow in order for us to make sure that what we are giving our residents or our clients, that we give them quality.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
All right, sir.
That was good, cousin. Well done. Anyone else?
Yeah, good evening. This is Bumi.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome.
Yes, sir. My main takeaway was that quality means different things. And what determines quality is the client. So to some is the financial aspect of the brief that means quality, not actually the grade or whatever. So when we talk of quality, it differs from person to person and organization to organization. So we need to know what quality means to our clients for us to really say we are delivering quality service.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's very good. Very good. All right, let's take one more. Who's going to take the last one? Bayomi, Maria, Hafiz, Abioye, Sunday. Which one of you is going to add one more item for takeaways from the last class?
Okay, good evening. This is Richardson.
Okay.
Okay, so just to add to what they said, almost most of the things that was taught. But for me, one of the takeaways is that to allow for feedback from our staff. If you don't just go about bossing them around, it also gives them a level of importance and gives us the feedback. Also helps us to give better better answers to their requests. So amongst all that has been said, for me, what the last person spoke about was something that actually has been working for me, understanding the customer's perspective of quality. And that way you can deliver based on each client. Don't just assume that this is what the client wants, that's what it is. But for the fact that you understand what the client wants for quality, that way it makes life easier for your facility manager. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very good. Okay. So I'm going to, I believe you'll see my slide already.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So I'm going to start today's lesson talking about maintenance planning and records. We'll look at some key considerations for planning, the planning process, how to plan and execute and control your maintenance, monitoring and evaluating your maintenance program, and then putting in place maintenance records. As a preamble, we're all in class when we studied maintenance strategies, facility maintenance strategies, and we looked at 3 strategies: the run to failure or corrective, the planned preventive, and the planned predictive maintenance strategies. And then we looked at a framework for combining these strategies for our various assets within our portfolios to give us the highest level of reliability and the lowest cost possible. In that lesson, we did not quite go into specifics of how to create a plan, right? So in today's lesson, we're going to move down from that strategy. Once you've decided which strategy you are going to deploy, you now need to create a plan for the strategy. We said something about the run to failure strategy. We said it does not require much planning, it doesn't have much planning requirements, because the run to failure strategy simply says, do nothing until there is a fault, okay? So for that one, we only need to have a budget in place. We only need to have some kind of estimation or risk analysis on how things can fail so that we can be ready to respond when it does fail. Now, but for other strategies, we need to have specific program in place. So if you picked out an asset and you say, oh, this is my power generator, it is going to be maintained using the preventive maintenance strategy, then you have a series of activities that need to be planned. And that's what we're going to look at in today's class. So in a simplified way, we can define your maintenance plan as a maintenance activity workflow. How these activities will be carried out or executed, a task breakdown of how you're going to ensure that your plan is implemented. So in essence, you envision your planned maintenance. You create a list of activities, what must be done. You create a sequence for those activities. You create a schedule for the sequence. So the set of activities for maintenance are the various lubricate, replace oil, replace filter, those kind of things. Those are activities. You set them one by one and say, for this equipment, I'm going to do this and these activities. You're not putting much thought into it. You're just trying to identify the activities. Then you begin to develop a sequence. Activity 1 happens before activity 2, before activity 3, and so on and so forth. And these are the frequencies. It is when you bring in the frequencies, you now begin to create a schedule. So the moment you have a frequency of weekly, then you know that on a particular day of the week, if it's every Wednesday, that activity must happen because it is weekly. So that's the whole idea of having a schedule. But before we get into all of that detail, we need to look at the life cycle view of maintenance planning. You cannot start maintaining what you don't know, right? So even if this is not the asset management class, I know you've covered that class already, that is a prerequisite for putting together a maintenance plan. You must have your asset data. You must also have done facility condition assessment to know the condition or state of every equipment. Now, the asset register is a no-brainer. Everybody just knows that. You must know what you are about to start maintaining. You must know the capacity, you must know the dimension, you must know the scope, you must know what it does, how valuable it is to the organization. But the condition is what most people ignore. You cannot have the same maintenance plan for the same type of asset or equipment at different stages of their life cycle. So if I were to have 5 generators across 5 locations or in the same campus, and each of those generators has to create a maintenance plan. Mind you, a maintenance plan is specific to an asset. If I'm going to create for generator A, which is a gen that was brought in just last month, done barely less than 500 hours, compared to generator B that's been here since 2016. For 6 years, this gen has really seen the main pressure of work in this place. It's done about 22,000 hours, and it is barely getting by. If I use the same maintenance plan for both equipment, even if they are the same capacity, the same manufacturer, the same model, the same everything else, I'm making a huge mistake. While generator A is still in a near brand new state, generator B is almost packing up, right? Even if it doesn't have so much of a high mean time between failure or random failure pattern that leads to frequent repairs, just that fact that they are both different in age. One has run only 1,000 or less, the other one has run probably 22 or 21,000 hours of running, tells you that they are not in the same condition. And every asset in a different condition must have its own maintenance plan. So if you don't have the condition assessment done, every time you say things like 200 hours servicing, 250 hours servicing, you're making a mistake already, right? So those are the first things that you need to consider, so that by the time you pick out one of the assets in your asset register, you know its condition, you make up a list of maintenance tasks that needs to be performed for it, and you put a frequency and you schedule how those activities will perform. And once you plan and you start executing, it runs that asset through to the end of its useful life. Maintenance planning can be short-term, mostly operational. You put together the scope of services, service objectives, tasks and actions, remedial action, routine maintenance, timescales, resource requirements, performance indicators, or long-term. Long-term are longer than 3 years. You create a plan that has more strategic focus, the vision for the asset, the mission, the environment, the situational analysis, profile of services, goals and objectives, links to corporate objectives and methodologies for managing that particular service, that particular item. In all, you need to have both the long-term plan for an asset. So the long-term plan is really created the day the asset is brought in. This asset has just been bought, or we've been doing an analysis of how the asset is going to be acquired. You create, first you identify the useful life of the asset. So if something is coming in, an air conditioning system or a chiller system is coming in, I determine that chiller system is going to be a 12-year asset. That is the beginning of your maintenance planning. For 12 years, I'm going to do that and that maintenance activities. I'm going to overhaul at so and so points in the history or life of that asset. So what you are doing is you are seeing end to end. You are creating a vision. You are creating a pattern of maintenance for that asset, and you're putting that as something that is accepted by management and approved. So that by the time you start creating the short-term tactical operational maintenance program, you're only aligning to that long-term plan that has been made, because your goal with short-term maintenance planning is to ensure that the asset can be used for the useful life you have determined or estimated. So what goes into your maintenance plan? A detailed description of each maintenance task. So you take a maintenance task. So what does changing oil mean, for example? Your maintenance plan says changing oil as one of the tasks that needs to be performed on your generator at the end of 300 hours of use, right? What does that mean? It means that you're going to take out the filter, drain the oil out, and refill. And if it's some deep cleaning you're trying to do, blow out the engine, do some interior cleaning using other solvents to ensure all sludges are removed, and then you introduce new oil. So basically, you can create a few line outline or a paragraph describing what that task is. The frequency will need to be indicated for each task. The resources, the people who are going to execute each task, whether in-house or outsourced, what position or designation is going to be responsible. The equipment condition needs to be stated as part of the plan, so that that condition that you have picked out of the condition assessment must show here that this equipment, we are doing 200 hours servicing routine because this is an old equipment that's done 21,000 and been overhauled, where it was 15,000 and so on. The type of maintenance task itself, the routine task as stated, the parts replacement, consumable replacement as stated, the delivery timeline. So for delivery timeline, you need to be conscious of two timelines. How long does it take to carry out this task? Want to change the oil? Does it take more than an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? How long does it take to do just that one task? It needs to be indicated there. Then you need to also be conscious of the time it takes you to implement that particular maintenance from when it becomes due. If an asset maintenance activity becomes due today, being the 25th of May 2022, how long can we cope for it and still be reliable for it to be serviced or maintained, right? So you need to have that delivery timeline. You say, this has to be done within 2 hours of this deadline or this timeline, or within 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, so that you can use that for planning. The tools and equipment that are required, this is also important. You'll see a carpenter going around with just a hammer with pinchers on the other edge. You'll see an electrician going around with just a tester, and that's all they carry everywhere. And the plumber going around with a pipe wrench, adjustable one, to take care of all pipe issues. You find them not paying attention to the right tools to do the job. And that's one of the beginning of getting it right the first time. The care of equipment and systems, the concern and caution that is put in place to ensure that equipment and systems are cared for. Why do we need a maintenance plan? You want your facilities to function safely, effectively, and efficiently. You want to reduce the possibility of hazards and accidents. You want to reduce service disruption, preserve facility systems, reduce maintenance costs, extend the useful life of the assets, at least extend it to the useful life. We don't necessarily want to maintain to make an asset exist forever, right? So when we say extend, we're talking about extending to the useful life of an asset. If you don't maintain properly, the asset will pack up and collapse and become useless before its useful time. If you do your maintenance well, it will get to its useful time. That's the whole idea of this lesson. Optimal availability and reliability of the assets. Make informed decisions on systems, repair, replace, and renewal. If you are maintaining properly, you will have data. And we're going to happen on that, spending more time talking about how much data you need when you're handling your maintenance program. If you have maintenance planning in place, you will have easier approvals for your budget. It will be easier to budget and get approvals. You'll be saving costs. Mind you, it is at the planning stage that you actually save costs. You don't go about saying, I could have spent 1 million, now I'm spending 500,000. The question will be, who estimated the 1 million, right? So when you are doing your budgeting for your maintenance program, you do your due diligence and ensure that the cost you are recording is actual cost. Your cost saving measures have already been applied before you arrived at your budget of costs. Better maintenance workflow, because you are planning, the workflow and standardization, process flow standardization for your workflow becomes easier. So that's something that you might really benefit from, because a lot of the issues we have on our site today are human error issues. Somebody doesn't do things in a particular way, and a particular client does not like that person. So the moment we remove those human errors, maintenance become almost seamless. You avoid future larger problems if you do your maintenance planning properly. Even if you are doing a reactive or run to failure strategy for certain asset classes, you still are proactive, right? You still are able to pick up things early in their exposure so that you can act on them and prevent more costly, damage to them. And then ensure equipment warranties are maintained. Many warranties have those clauses that disqualify you from enjoying warranties if you did not follow certain procedures. So if you are taking on a new asset, don't ignore the instructions that come with the asset. Read them. You know how it is when you get it in and the technicians tell you, oh, we've been working with this machine since 2001. This particular one probably has some change technology, some new features they are not aware of, but they will not read the manual. So that's important that we ensure that our teams are able to read the manuals and act in ways that provide the best maintenance for the assets we've acquired. We also need to keep be abreast of latest trends in that particular equipment maintenance or that particular device that we're trying to maintain. If there are small issues that are cropping up, we do not allow those issues to become large issues because we are planning. The whole idea of planning is bringing something to the table to say, what is it? What does it do? What do we stand to gain if we maintain this properly? How do we maintain step 1, step 2, step 3? It puts that particular asset in your mind. You think about it. You act in ways that can help you make it available continuously. A guide to maintenance planning, you determine the scope for the maintenance program, you set timelines, you allocate resources, develop maintenance checklists, and create a maintenance schedule, and then maintenance records. So those last 4 items, who will do the work? That's the maintenance resource allocation. If you're going to contract out, if you're going to use in-house staff, it has to be planned for so that you can be sure of the availability of the team members that are doing the respective tasks. You're not going to be sending people elsewhere and be expecting them to be here doing the same task, right? So resource allocation is very key. And then having a maintenance checklist. The checklist is where you indicate all of those common asset components that might become dilapidated or that can degrade, right? The checklist is to ensure that the maintenance plan contains considerations for every pack that needs to be looked at or taken care of. You create a maintenance schedule. Schedule is simply created by, now that you know all the tasks that need to be performed, you determine which one is dependent on the other dependencies. This has to happen before this, has to happen before that. After agreeing on dependencies, you set frequencies for each of them. And then based on those frequencies, you create a schedule, which is actually calendar items, making everyone visible to a calendar that can be checked. And then you create a template. So the way you create a maintenance checklist and schedule, you also need to create a template for maintenance record so that as people do the things you've asked them to do, they can record on the record documents evidence that they actually did it. I'm still talking of recording on paper because that's what's most common amongst your peers these days. All right, so we talked about the asset register as one of the most important inputs, right, that goes into your assets. If you don't know the size, the scale of the equipment, the capacity in terms of output, the energy consumption, just keep on and on and on, naming the features of your asset. You cannot say you're managing that asset very well, right? So identifying all assets, all inventory are those consumables that we use to maintain the assets themselves. Determine what will be included in the maintenance plan. Once you determine what will be included in the maintenance plan, you build the maintenance plan. All right, the condition assessment, you carry out analysis of the asset condition by basically just looking for defects. You're looking for defects, you are scoping the defects, you're pricing, you're putting in costs for fixing the defects. And that's what basically condition assessment is, because once the chips are down and you're asked to prioritize, you already have done that to say, this one is more critical to our operation than the other, let's do it first. Condition assessment helps you determine the present building deficiencies. This is the main thing that you're looking for. So every time I say, what is facility condition assessment or condition facility audit, tell yourself it is to determine the present building deficiencies or defects. That's what we're basically doing. Determine the cost for the remedial action, make informed decision regarding potential hazards, provide a benchmark of building present conditions. So you must understand that benchmark. We use a term called the facility condition index, where we divide out the cost of repairs that are due over the cost of acquiring or replacing that asset. That ratio is your facility condition index. And you can find it out for all kinds of buildings and compare their conditions easily without having to deal with a large building versus a small building complication. If it's a small building and the maintenance that needs to be done in terms of repairs and maintenance and the other routine maintenance, if I add that and I divide it by the cost of replacing that small asset, whatever ratio I get can be compared to the ratio of repairs required over the cost of replacement for a large, sophisticated facility. So it is the ratio that we call the FCI, and the FCI helps us to ascertain the condition of any facility. So if I am maintaining a facility, why do I need the FCI? Why do I need to do condition assessment? Again, there is a correlation between how much maintenance is costing versus the condition of the facility. So if you are using a facility and it's being run down, no maintenance program in place for it, be rest assured that the facility's condition will be deteriorating further, right? So when you do the FCI analysis, you use it to make a case for adequate maintenance budget release and funding. You also use it to make a case for the impact of your prior year's investment in operations and maintenance, because what that does is, if previous years I was able to get all of this place back up and running efficiently at 20 million, right? My FCI from that 20 million investment became very good, probably like 7% or 10%. Oh, that's okay, we can live with that, right? So if after some years of further wear and tear and deterioration, I go asking for funds to do maintenance and all of that repair, there's a likelihood that there'll be a reference back to the money that has been spent before. So using the FCI will help you say, I use this amount and the FCI dropped to this, which put our building in good state. Mind you, you can have other types of ways of communicating this, but the FCI is very powerful at it. So if I am going to spend so much again this time, I can guarantee you that the FCI is going to drop even further. You use FCI to communicate with CFOs and MDs regarding the strategic nature of the work that we do as facility managers. Once you have the condition assessment in place, you do the estimate for the remedial action, you make decision about potential hazards, provide a benchmark of building present condition and so on and so forth. So the whole idea is you are able to take that facility further into the future because you know the condition, you can forecast, you can project into the future. So your maintenance cannot be complete. In fact, you don't have a maintenance program unless you know the condition of the asset. When you take over a new facility, you need to be able to access data on past maintenance. You need to know up to that level of detail that tells you this AC has been replaced with a compressor, a condenser, and a capillary tube, and so on and so forth. So you know what's been replaced. You know the date each of them has been replaced. Without maintenance records, when something suddenly goes bad, there will be all kinds of conclusions. People will say things like, oh, this thing is very bad, it's epileptic, replace it, give me a new one. But if you have a record that tells you, oh, this has not been having faults, meantime within failure is a metric can use in this case that says the equipment has been pretty good because meantime between failures is reasonable, right? So the records that are generated in the past are the ones that are going to enable us to maintain into the future. So you don't go about your maintenance without generating records that anybody that comes tomorrow will be able to access. In fact, you should be able to have the records in place such that you will use it as a justification for future spending. And also it helps you know whether the assets have been adequately maintained, over-maintained, or under-maintained in the past. If there's a record that shows that the equipment has been overly maintained or properly maintained, you can be rest assured that your own future maintenance can be forecasted to be on the average or low in terms of cost and resources requirements. So the preventive maintenance plan development starts with the asset register. Pick out an asset and say, I want to maintain this asset. Of course, you should have a maintenance plan for everything that you own. Luckily for you, the maintenance strategy for run to failure does not require a maintenance planning in terms of activities. But again, there must be a budget in place that comes out of estimate and understanding of how much goes into that assets maintenance. So once you decide what to maintain, you evaluate asset cost of repair and maintenance, repair and replacement, determine frequency of performing maintenance. Why are you doing evaluation of asset cost of repair and replacement? You are trying to do FCI. Determine the frequency of performing the maintenance, level of priority for the assets. There are some assets that are low priority that you don't need to force their maintenance with all kinds of stringent applications. You basically just want to do simple maintenance. There are some that have been poorly maintained and they are going to be epileptic if you don't do some drastic maintenance effort on them. So the equipment manufacturer's manual will give you some hints. We're supposed to have O&M manual also developed by the contractors who have built the assets, because the equipment itself is just one part of the O&M manual that you need to have in place. And then determine the tasks that need to be performed, assign skill level and labor time for each task, schedule the maintenance tasks, schedule equipment downtime, because every time you want to do something that is going to affect the equipment and make sure it's out of circulation, you need to schedule it. You cannot just wake up and say, I'm passing by, I want to do your generator service. No way. And then create weekly plans for maintenance tasks, a plan for reactive maintenance needs, train maintenance personnel in maintenance procedures using work method statements, put safety measures in place, make sure you're available for the availability of safety data sheets and job safety analysis and all those permit to work and safe work method statements and so on and so forth. They have to be in place because they are actually part of the things that you need as tools for your preventive maintenance. You have a maintenance plan and you have technicians and contractors and people who run around trying to follow the plan. One thing I've found happening in most sites, which is rather appalling and we must stop it, is that technicians sit down and wait for something to break. I hear from one of my sites always about issues of air conditioning. I started digging into what was happening. I realized that we were basically just servicing some of the assets, some of the ACs, and leaving some of them idle because, presumably, they are not being used or nobody's actually paying attention to them. And when they pay attention to them, they become problematic because issues start cropping up. You're supposed to have routine set of activities placed in intervals for assets that you have determined to run the preventive maintenance approach for. All right, it's very important that you have a plan for those activities. Now, when you are executing those activities, you need to provide records to track how you are doing. Every technician that you have on site must have a reporting template that you can see on a daily basis. Information for scheduling labor, materials, costs, and tool, right? So these are things you must keep track. These are actually things that you put into a work order system, either in the CMMS, that's the computerized maintenance management system, or physically using paper work orders. There's a huge focus, a big focus now on working with computerized maintenance management system. All your records will be intact. You're not going to be looking for scrolling through logbooks and spreadsheets in computers that are probably not properly saved and they're lost in the computer, or folder files inside the shelf. Records are kept right inside the software. Scheduling is made easy because once you indicate the frequency in a software and you pick the first day you should start, the software can roll out for a whole year or even 2 years for you. And you can prioritize maintenance work according to what is most critical at the moment, because you have everything in the picture, you have a plan in a spreadsheet, and you can now begin to do your prioritization. And then your staff resources needs to be managed carefully. Benchmark your SLAs and your KPIs. What it basically means is that the service level agreement and the key performance indicators you are achieving from your maintenance, you check how well they match up or how well they meet up with industry best practices. That's what benchmarking is. You have to identify 1 or 2 persons running certain operations that are similar to yours, who's supposed to be your friend for you to benchmark and exchange ideas and information with. And then, of course, the maintenance tasks will be written into the software. There'll be a tracking, there'll be a reminder, and then there'll be analysis being done as to who is doing what. Because once you make those entries in the software, it catalogs them and stores them for life. And then controlling of maintenance costs, their risk management report, and historical data. So all of those data we're looking for today, people that are using the computerized maintenance management system already have data because take for example, I have an app that says the water dispenser is due for maintenance, right? And then I click on it, and then I assign the work of the washing machine to one of my technicians. When they look at it, the things that need to be done, step by step, the tools they would need to take along, and so on. That information guides them on how to select materials, tools, and resources. When they get to site and they do the job, they're supposed to report back into the system. That's how that job, that hour spent by the technician, and the cost release of materials used in the store now becomes integrated. That whole information comes straight back to be documented. So tomorrow you want to know how much that maintenance costs, you want to know any other things about maintenance, all you need to do is just go into the software and download the report that gives you all of that information. And then you have to, like I said during the quality management class, you have to have a continuous reporting mechanism. Okay, everyone must have a continuous reporting mechanism for every job that we do. We're talking about the checklist as a very important aspect of the maintenance plan. It enables the facility manager to maximize efficiency and get all maintenance tasks done. The starting point for routine maintenance is the checklist. It's used to inspect facility in a logical sequence. It provides detailed list of facility different parts, aids a facility manager during management by working around, and indicates the frequency of maintenance activities. What the checklist basically does is to look at the whole facility. You're not being too nitpicky when doing the checklist at this point, because you're still going to do maintenance as we go on and talk about maintenance. But this is supposed to be used as a way to maximize your own productivity and efficiency. If you spend time looking for something, that time is wasted. All right. So the management by working around is a way of teaching facility managers that your job is not desk bound. You're not supposed to be in the office 8 hours of the day. So I set a rule of thumb of 50%, which is half of the time you're at work spent on your feet, spent in engagement. So you go into a space and you greet and you take a look at work that needs to be done, and then you get your chance to do it, and then you report back to whoever created that ticket to say we have solved that problem. So in all, the checklist is like a guide. I want to put what's important regarding my maintenance in the checklist. Okay, a detailed list of facilities, different parts, is used to inspect facility in a logical sequence, a starting point for routine maintenance, and enables the facility managers to maximize efficiency all through. All right, so we're going to look at monitoring and evaluation, but then I want to take us on a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Please, someone put a note on the chat to say we're on break for 5 minutes. I'll be right back, okay? Thanks. Okay. Let's get back on. I hope we're all here. All right, so what is monitoring? You want to ensure that maintenance are executed as planned. It's not enough to have a plan. You must implement the plan, and you must ensure that the plan, there are evidence that the plan is being executed. if you want to be able to review or revise your plan, you must have some documents to show what has been done and the results from that action for you to know whether your plan as it is still adequate and can continue, or that plan should be revised or changed. It provides feedback on maintenance activities, identify maintenance problems, take corrective actions on the identified problems. Evaluation involves addressing maintenance plan strengths and weaknesses, assessing the identified maintenance problems, assessing the effectiveness of maintenance activities, review maintenance records, and setting up methods for corrective actions. If you are maintaining a particular asset using a particular plan, and that same asset is breaking down frequently, and you cannot sit down to do an evaluation, so you can ask yourself, what can I do about my maintenance plan? Why is my maintenance plan not giving me the result I expect from these assets? That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. So the record of how the asset is being maintained, monitoring that to ensure that that record is in line with what was planned is what the first part is, the monitoring. The evaluation is where you now look at the results of what you are getting. Is it aligning with your expectation? If it is not, what can you do about the maintenance plan so you can tweak it? For example, you're having a generator that is 20,000 hours run, and you are still doing servicing at 250 or 300 hours, and it's breaking down more often and spilling out oil and pushing soot all over the place. Now, what you are trying to do in evaluation is go through all the planned activities for that generator, look at the execution reports, the maintenance reports to see if we've been complying with what we have planned. And then if we've been complying with what we have planned, then what is the next thing? We're not asking ourselves, why is it that this particular generator is still giving us a problem? So it means that execution is not the problem, and that the maintenance plan itself is the problem. So we now need to go back and work on the maintenance plan so we can change it, improve it in terms of corrective actions to make sure it's applicable to what we're trying to achieve. But again, that evaluation aspect of maintenance requires multiple stakeholders to be involved. The maintenance crew themselves, you, the facility managers, your bosses, customers that are using those assets. Take a air conditioning system, for example. Those who are using this air conditioning system, they can be brought in to also talk about their stories or their experiences with that particular asset. The basis for putting together maintenance records is called a work order. A work order is actually the tool you use to execute your plan. So if I create a plan that has all my assets, for each asset, I have line items for maintenance activities, for each maintenance activity, the frequency, and then the calendar items of when each of those activities will be performed. Every time it is due, I'm supposed to create a work order. That work order should capture the asset details, should capture the maintenance, plant maintenance that's required, and then the tools and materials that will be used also indicated. The estimated time for that job to be done is indicated. If there's a customer that particular asset serves, the customer is also indicated. That is a preventive maintenance work order. That same work order can be used to pick up a run to failure strategy item, an item that is not on a preventive maintenance. So in this case, we need to indicate where that request came from. Was it picked up as an inspection request by an inspection item by an FM or any of the FM team, or was it requested by a client? What is the complaint? What is the issue observed? What is the scoping that was done by the technicians? This is the job activity that was performed to resolve that issue, how long it took. So whether it's a preventive maintenance work or a a reactive maintenance work, you must have a work order. A work order is what you use to transition between the plan and the report. It is the action tool. It captures everything from who initiated to who acted and what was done, the materials that were used, consumables consumed and all that, all the way to the final sign off where you have the client actually signing off and putting a survey to say we have done, we have accepted the job and we have done according to the so and so rating. Once that's done, that information is now collated as a series of work orders that are logged back into the report. All of this can be handled automatically using a computerized maintenance system. In fact, once plans are developed in a CMMS system, those plans, you feed all the default information into it. You feed the date and the frequency into it. All of those things can now generate data on its own that guides whoever is going to work. And whoever is picking up that work order, maybe from his phone or tablet and is going to do a job, makes additional entries into it, tells when I moved in, tells when I left, tells materials used, current condition, and then he submits that same work order back into the system. It is that same work order that will be opened by the client or the user to say, we've observed the work done, everything is okay, and then put a survey feedback that says you've done well. Now, that same information is in the system. Whenever we're going to generate a record, historical data about parts used for a particular equipment, we're going to sort through papers. If we're going to generate data on how many hours has been invested of technicians' time on a particular asset, that information is available in the system because they've all gone into entries and they have aggregated back into the system. So that's the real value of documenting and recording. Whether it's software or paper, there must be adequate record, log of maintenance activities as they are taking place. Not at the end of the month, you want to remember which AC was serviced, what was done about the AC. No, that information is captured exactly the time when it's done. We can track a lot of things through keeping records of maintenance. There are certain decisions that you cannot make without referring back to records. You cannot refer back to records. There are certain justifications you want to make to management, and they ask certain questions, and you look stupid if you don't have the record. Oh, this equipment is so epileptic. We have all kinds of issues. It breaks down very frequently. When you don't have information on mean time between failure, you don't have information on what has been failing frequently, you know, what was the last time it failed, what was the impact of that failure, what has done, the cost that has entered little by little by little over time. Without being able to pull out those data, what you are saying about an equipment being epileptic is just mere talk. That's not professional. Professionals will have data to back up what they are saying. So that's what we're saying here. You've planned, you've executed, please and please keep appropriate, adequate record. And those records are supposed to be stored and retrievable for a certain number of years, right? There are some records that are kept for life. For example, if you have permits to install certain equipment, those records are not thrown away. They have been approved. If they are the ones that requires annual or frequent renewals, those renewals needs to happen as well, and that information needs to be kept in the system, not thrown away. There are some that you don't necessarily need beyond the data extraction point. If you are using paper work orders, for example, and the information has now been transferred into a computerized maintenance management system, then those papers are no longer relevant. So the whole idea of keeping record is make sure that as far as that asset is still in use, the record of how we installed and have been maintaining and operating it from that point when we installed it must also be available so that people get access, make decisions as to when to replace, when to overhaul, and so many other decisions. And when there are compliance issues from from regulatory authorities, you have records to bail yourself out, right? So there are so many of these, the purpose of maintenance record, the advantage of having maintenance records in place. We cannot overstress that in this class. If we don't have records in place, we will be doing some expensive repairs. We will not be able to have individualized maintenance programs like we said at the beginning of this class. You cannot have a generic maintenance plan for all assets, even for assets of the same type, right? And then you have warranty that could be voided because you did not keep records. If a manufacturer supplies an equipment and says these are the ways you should maintain it, and you did not keep records of what you were doing, the manufacturer can deny your warranty very easily. Increased safety for operators, and equipment can become dangerous if we do not maintain it properly and keep records. But of course, if we do, the equipment will last longer. We'll be able to get better understanding of our assets because we have records of how it's been going or how it's been working. And let's talk about mean time between failures. When we're using assets, there's always that tendency to consider the asset as something that is supposed to be trashed because of frequent failures. But those frequent failures should be documented so you can establish your metric called mean time between failures. If I'm doing maintenance activity or maintenance service at a certain frequency, and I am seeing breakdowns on that same equipment, if I shorten that frequency, maybe I was doing it for 300 hours intervals, I'm now doing it for 200 hours interval. This is going to cost me more, but with mean time between failures increasing, or the total of time it fails in a given period reducing, I can use those as my statistics, as data for justifying the increased maintenance activity or the improved frequency for the maintenance activities. We talked about your need to have a detailed asset register so that you can have an understanding of the assets you have. One aspect of the asset register that is often missing in most asset registers are the critical components of the asset. So even though that will not be in your main asset inventory or asset register, in your maintenance plan, which you have moved that the list of assets into your maintenance plan, you need to also indicate the major components that make up your equipment, so that once it's time to do maintenance, you will not miss out on certain belts, on certain rollers, on certain components that can be easily worn out and easily cause failures in your facility. And then you can also create a program for storage, taking materials in bulk because you will need them, because you know the common materials. You create a history of how they are being used, and you can provide an inventory. Set up your reorder levels to know when to restock. You know the ones that are frequently used and the ones that are not being frequently used, so that you don't stock everything equally, right? That happens a lot. You go to some stores, some things are expiring, some things are not available at all. Why? Because we bought everything in equal numbers, and over time we did not even use the data on how some asset components are being used up to make a change. We just keep buying certain things because it's time to buy. No. All right, there is, we talked about record keeping, a few guidelines on how to put together your records. We found situations where you kept a record because it's not on physical paper file in the folder inside a physical file rack, it's lost inside the computer. So there must be some ways to document, a proper naming convention for how to file things that you put in your record. So if you know the subject of the file, which is maybe maintenance plan, maintenance report, weekly maintenance report, and so on, you put that as the first aspect of that naming convention. Then you can put an indication of period. If it is quarterly report, you can say Q1 2022, for example, in that name of that file, and then put an indication of who, department, or asset, so that you can tell this is the maintenance report for January 2022 for building X, for example. That file will easily be traceable whenever you go into your filing cabinets or your software, your folders, your computer folders to get them, and ensure that you can access them because you remember that you follow the naming convention in naming. Every time you use a naming convention in naming, you have at least 3 components that you must remember. One, in the case of using the search. And when they all go into the same folder, they tend to arrange themselves. So you can easily see what you are looking for in the order they came or whatever order you have named them in that convention. We'll talk about record retention. I basically say a maintenance record should be retained for as long as that asset is in use. Until that asset is completely removed, you don't destroy records, and that's where the computerized maintenance management system is very helpful. So you create work orders. As I define work orders as the tool you use to execute your plan. Is that intermediary between the plan and the reports of your maintenance. You gather initial information, determine the nature of the problem, provide the necessary information needed for the work order, task, identify materials and labor required, create the task necessary to complete the work order, assign the work order, follow up with the work assignment. So you get somebody to go and do the job. That person has to have enough information to be able to go and execute the job. I've also talked about the whole process of identifying what needs to be done in terms of maintenance activities. When you're creating that spreadsheet that called your maintenance plan, it's identify the maintenance activities, you create the dependencies, which one must happen before which, you schedule. And when you are trying to schedule, you create a sequence in that schedule. And then you can now, based on the duration for each item, if an item of maintenance activity can be done in 1 day, it should stay on 1 day on your calendar because it can be done in 1 day. And then you'll have other tools developed out of your plan with which you are going to monitor that particular maintenance program that you have put in place. Your staff should not be doing maintenance activities as as they feel like. Some of these staff go away to go and service one AC and they spend 3-4 hours. You have to have a standard measure of how much time should go into standard maintenance activities in your facility. And you may have to do these by working with them, observing them, drawing out the process, a standard process for doing that maintenance activity, so that a time is agreed. This servicing takes 45 minutes. We spend 20 minutes in the indoor, blowing out the drain, cleaning the filters, and cleaning the grill. And then outside, it takes about 25 minutes to wrap up certain areas, pressure wash after losing the casing, and then cover it back. And then maybe another 5 minutes to observe the system in rest position before you restart it to be sure it's working. And then maybe another 10 minutes to ensure that the system is working adequately, water is not leaking, and the ice is not freezing on its pipes. Now, if you go through that step-by-step way of doing that maintenance, you can now arrive at this is how long it takes to do one maintenance. And then you can now also make certain other inferences, like if certain maintenance activities are going to be done in the same space, let's assume 4 or 5 ACs are in one room, you can do this one, and while you're observing this AC at rest, you can be working on the other one. You come back and put it on. While it is working for you to check it, you're working on the next one. So in essence, you can actually save time and put a better estimate of how much time it will take to do that job. Workers need to understand that you know how long they should take to do a typical maintenance activity, especially the routine maintenance activity, so that you can guide them to become more productive. And they must also know that you are tracking and recording how long it takes them to do specific tasks. And at the end of the month, when you are doing your report, they will see from the records that have been kept throughout the month, how many work orders they executed and how much time should have been used for those work orders and how much time they actually used. Therefore, you can now project to them how idle they have been or how productive they have been throughout that period. This is very important lesson. There's something I wanted to talk about when we're talking about the scope of services when you're doing maintenance. It's very important that you break down that servicing into maintenance scope items. Do not just have servicing. If you notice what I've been talking about, maintenance planning all along, I've been talking about specific activities. This is the asset that needs to be maintained. These are the activities that need to be done. It is based on those activities you create a plan. If you are going to create a contract for a contractor, if you are going to create a PO for a vendor or whatever, a tool for executing that job, it must be based on maintenance activities. Never ever call something servicing of this or servicing of that as what you pay or invest money on. No, it is very wrong. Don't use servicing. Use the breakdown of the scope items, which is the maintenance activities. So a generator maintenance will include cleaning of the body, disassembly to take out filters and draining the oil, replacing those, reassembly of the system, testing to be sure. Just having those items itemized. Sometimes you hear of elevator contractor telling you that it's a secret what they do on the elevator. Forget it. There's no secret in maintenance. You must know what you are paying for. You must be able to supervise that maintenance activity, and you must be able to know that you're getting value from it. Because if something happens tomorrow and that equipment collapses or the frequency of breakdown increases, you will be the one to take the rap. You are accountable ultimately. And you must have a clear picture of what's being done or what's been done for you to be fully accountable. And that accountability extends to costs, the cost of maintenance. You may not even know that you have, you might have many units of the same assets, maybe air conditioning units, and you are spending and spending and spending on only a few of them compared to the others. If you're not keeping record, you won't even know how much is going in. Many of us keep aggregate record. We know that total money spent on the AC contract is this amount, right? But if you get to the point where you can trace how much was spent on specific fuses and belts and fans and and filters for the specific units, you can begin to isolate where your problem is from those that are working all right in the facilities. And then your work order as a tool for managing work is something that comes back as the record of what's been done. It has to be approved. It has to be commented on by whoever raised the work order, especially for reactive work and for preventive work by the FM who created that plan in the first place. All right, so that's our lesson for today. You have some questions to go in your assessment in this class. I would like us to have a discussion. I want to hear what questions you have, what lessons you've learned, what changes you want to make in your own maintenance programs. Oluwayemi, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Please, in this class, you've talked about work order, and I saw something like permit to work. Please, can you explain the difference between work order and permit to work?
Okay, very good. The permit to work is a health and safety tool, right? It is used to document the hazards related to the work. So we discussed permit to work inside HSC class. So it's a HSC tool for monitoring and controlling actual work, when work is going on. What kind of hazards are we prepared for? Who are the witnesses to the various preparation that has been done? Those who are going to do the job, what reviews have they done? What mitigating factors have they considered to prevent those hazards from becoming risk to them at the work, at the job? The supervisors, have they witnessed it? The HSC officer, have they witnessed it? Each person signs at multiple levels to show that we all understand the risk and we all know what to do to prevent that risk from causing, from that hazard from becoming risk or endangering anybody's life. So that's what the permit to work does for your work. The work order itself is a tool for managing the entire work, not just the HSC. The work order does not have to do with the risk and the hazards and the rest. The work order documents the whole administrative process, the whole technical scoping that was done, all of the inputs in terms of how much cost, how much materials were used, the time that was applied to doing that particular job. It's like a tool for execution. It records everything from initiation to closing out of the work order. Some work orders even include sections where you have the user or the customer rating you for the work you have done.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. All right. I hope we all took appropriate notes and we can work on our assignments, assessments right now. Please go ahead and do it now and turn them in the usual way you've been doing with the last ones. Thank you and have a good evening.